Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the topics of November 6th, 2021. Let us take a look at the topics that I will be discussing with you for November 6th. First is Delhi Regional Security Dialogue on Afghanistan. We know recently even there was a dialogue on Afghanistan with regarding to aid at the United Nations, and also the foreign ministers of the Central Asian countries and the neighboring countries of Afghanistan met in Iran to discuss about the situation in Afghanistan, as there is growing concern with regard to the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan. Now, Delhi Regional Security Dialogue on Afghanistan is to be held on November 10th by India. The second is US jab still out of India due to indemnity issue. Stubble burning is the third, and it says significantly affects lung health, which is a study by an eminent institution. The fourth is Goa Maritime Conclave to discuss security challenges. Fifth is Ethiopia rebel joined forces against the government. Sixth, Goel urges five-fold boost in export of technical textiles. Seventh is charting a trade route after the MC12, that is the Ministerial Conference 12 of the WTO. This is an editorial in the Hindu. The right time for India to have its own climate law, again an editorial in the Hindu. The cost of prohibition, an editorial again in the Hindu regarding to the prohibition law in Bihar and its negative fallouts. Keeping the faith is with regard to WHO granting EUL to Covaxin, and this again is an editorial in the Hindu. So let us look at the first thing, that is Delhi Regional Security Dialogue on Afghanistan to be held on November 10th. Now India is to host this dialogue on Afghanistan. This is said to be a crucial meeting on Afghanistan, and it is a NSA level, that is National Security Advisor level meeting, and it is to be chaired by Ajit Doval. Now India already invited the NSAs of Russia, Iran, China, Pakistan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan. These are the neighboring countries for the meeting. So, according to the sources in the government, there has been an overwhelming response to India's invitation. Central Asian countries as well as Russia and Iran have also confirmed their participation. And this is the first time that all the Central Asian countries, not just Afghanistan's immediate land neighbors, are to participate in the format. So, this shows the growing concern of the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan and the importance of the situation in Afghanistan, not only to India being India's neighbor, but also in the neighboring countries such as the Central Asian countries, Russia, China, etc. There is recognition of the importance attached to India's role in promoting peace and security in Afghanistan. Now, this will be the first time, as I said, that the Central Asian countries will be participating. The Taliban's takeover after the US troops left the country following a 20-year war on terror has been particularly concerning for India, and which has long maintained that Pakistan would likely use Afghanistan for terror attacks in Jammu and Kashmir. Two earlier meetings of the format have been held in Iran in 2018 and 2019, but the third meeting could not be held due to the pandemic. Now, there has been security concerns from India with regard to again the rise of insurgency and the security situation in Jammu and Kashmir. Recently, we have also seen that there was attacks on the civilian population, especially recently. Then there is also the concern of India with regard to infiltration. The Haqqani network, which India criticizes and sees it as a terrorist organization which has organized various attacks on India, has the support of not only Pakistan but also they are heading the government in Taliban. India thinks that various terrorist organizations will get a boost due to the Taliban takeover. The similar concerns are also growing in China and Russia and even the Central Asian countries. Iran has its own concerns. There is concern not only of terrorism, insurgency, but radical Islamization being on the rise. There is also the concern of humanitarian problems that could arise due to refugee crisis, and the human development indices. Apart from that, the increase in drug trade, which is mainly the opium which is grown in Afghanistan, and not only that but also increasing money laundering, etc. So these are few of the security challenges that the various countries are looking at. So, this meeting will be discussing various issues. However, the Taliban has said that it will not use its land for terrorist attacks on various other countries, or not encourage terrorist organizations. But looking at the recent government formation and the demands from various global countries that it should be representative of all the sections of the society, the government, and they being adamant on having an Islamic form of government, there are doubts still raised on the credibility of what the Taliban is saying by its mouth and what it will do in action. So there is rise in concerns, and this meeting will see what the next agenda or the decisions that the leaders will be taking. Now, the second most important is that US jabs still out of India due to the indemnity issue. This has also been an issue earlier when there was need of vaccines, especially during the second wave when India fell short of vaccines, and then there was demands from foreign vaccines. Now, US vaccine makers including Pfizer and Moderna have sought for indemnity against the adverse effects of vaccination. Indemnity sought in the current form may not be granted, says India, and sought certain changes in the clauses. So, what is indemnity about? Now, the US vaccine makers are asking for indemnity against liability for use of the vaccines. If you look at the Oxford Dictionary, it defines indemnity as against something as protection against damage or loss, or a promise to pay for the damage or loss that happens. Let us take the example of the insurance industry, where the word is commonly used in the contracts in the insurance industry. Now, for example, a car insurance company provides indemnity against the claims in case the car meets an accident. The insurance company pays the claimant for the claims and not the car owner or the car company who sold the car. So, this is a very good example of indemnity. In simple words, the companies now who are selling the vaccines to India want the government to sign a contract which includes an indemnity clause saying that if there are any adverse effects because of the use of their vaccine, for example, let us take Pfizer, then government will, according to whatever terms they agree to, government will either bear a part of the compensation or will ensure the compensation or whatever steps they take, but the company is not going to bear the total of the compensation for any adverse effects of its vaccine. In simple words, it just means this. So I've given the meaning further in COVID scenario. So there is already a doubt about the impact of the various COVID vaccines on the human body, as they have been cleared for emergency use under the circumstances of COVID-19. Still, there is not a complete study on the impact, and as such, there might be adverse effects for which the company might have to pay certain compensation, which is sought by the government or the regulator or the vaccinated person. In such a case, the companies want the governments to bear a percentage of the liability cost, thereby reducing the burden on the vaccine companies. This is what is about indemnity. So, India has not been very keen to grant indemnity to foreign players, as it feels that it should be for all, the treatment should be same for all. Now, Indian vaccine players have not officially sought any indemnity against the adverse events. India does not give any protection to COVID-19 vaccine manufacturers against any complications or adverse effects that arise from the administration of their jabs. Both the Serum Institute of India and the Bharat Biotech, the manufacturers of Covishield and Covaxin, respectively, have to report all health complications arising out of the vaccine use to the authorities. Companies shall be liable for all adversities as per the Central Drug Standards and Control Organization, Drugs or the Cosmetics Act, etc. The purchase order signed between the Government of India and Indian manufacturers, say the government. Now, vaccine companies like the US vaccine companies, etc., have cited instances of the US Countermeasures Inquiry Injury Compensation Program And the similar programs in UK, Canada, EU, Singapore, and even the WHO COVAX that protect the vaccine manufacturers or distributors from claims. India may want the foreign players to agree to local compensation norms, says the government, and therefore talks with Pfizer, Moderna, J&J, that is Johnson & Johnson, are on. India expects the local vaccine availability to improve from September itself, and therefore there are analysts who say that there will be no need for imported vaccines, and therefore the indemnity issue should not be troubling the government. However, it is to be seen that Covaxin, which has recently got the EUL from WHO, has not kept up to its supply demands, and already there is a shortage that is being faced in certain states, and there is the issue of wastage. So in these tough times, especially to deal with the pandemic, one is that the companies have to improve and increase their supply. Second is that the vaccine wastage has to be reduced, and third is the government has to take into consideration the local demands and also meet the demands for the vaccination and discuss the proper clauses with regard to indemnity. There should be also a greater push at the WTO regarding the IPR on vaccines, so that the technology is easy transferable and more companies in India can get access to technology so that they can develop the vaccines faster. So this is a three solution which I can provide for the vaccine availability. Now the next most important is about stubble burning significantly affects lung health, and this study has been done by researchers by the TERI, that is the Energy Resources Institute at Delhi, which is a prestigious institute that studies about the various air pollution effects, etc., and it has been contributed from the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Delhi, and the Punjab Agriculture University. Now already we are in the month of November and winter is on high, and there has been concern about the stubble burning and the effect on the health of the residents in the northern India because of the stubble burning. Recently there has been a study which also said that there is less adoption of the technologies which the government is providing, for example happy seeders, to the farmers because of the cost, and also that they want to immediately sow the crop, and therefore they find stubble burning as a very easy solution. So this study was carried about through study about the effect of health population pollution on health in India, and it was conducted in the most core area of the region where stubble burning is very prominent, that is the 6 villages of Patiala, spanning 2 phases. So one in October 2018 and then again March and April 2019. So closely 3,600 participants participated, and from 10 to 60 years of age were included in the study. So let us see what the study says. Now stubble burning has been reckoned among the major contributors of air pollution, especially in South Asia. It is a significant source of gaseous pollutants such as carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, nitrous oxides, sulfur oxide, methane, as well as particulate matter, causing serious damage to human health and environment. The study by TERI also found that there are serious lung problems, breathing problems, and also the efficacy or the capacity of the lung decreases because during the seasons when the stubble burning is there, and there is breathing problem in the various population of various ages. This is found, and these are the various pollutants which are contributed when the stubble is burned, and this causes a serious damage to health and environment. Now the health effects range from skin to eyes irritation to severe neurological, cardiovascular and respiratory diseases, asthma, chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases, bronchitis, lung capacity loss, emphysema, cancer, etc. It also leads to an increase in mortality rates due to the prolonged exposure to high pollution. Now, TERI reported in 2012 air pollution led to about 5 million deaths in South Asia, which is about which is about 22% of the total deaths in the region. It affects air quality. Stubble burning also affects the soil fertility and also the plants growing around, economic development, and climate. Now, the study also says that if the crops stubbles are managed properly, it could provide immense benefits to the farmers and protect the environment from severe pollution. Some of the alternative management practices include incorporation of the stubble in the soil itself, use of stubble as fuel in power plants, using them as raw material for pulp and paper industries, or as biomass for biofuel production. It can also be used to generate compost and biochar or as blend for production of cement and bricks. Now, most of the farmers in North India are not aware of these alternatives to manage stubble and therefore consider burning as the best option. This necessitates the need for immense awareness among the farmers about the availability of economically feasible options and the composite effects of stubble burning. The government should also take steps to provide loans to the farmers to buy the technologies which make stubble burning easier. Apart from this, for the farmers who want to sow the crops immediately after the harvesting of the crops without taking much gap and not taking recourse to machines and go for stubble burning, they should be paid some incentives so that they use the stubble to be mixed in the soil itself, or then they can use it to give it to the paper or the pulp industries, or also use it for as biomass for biofuel production. And now this responsibility mainly should be taken by the local level gram sabhas and the local government to collect these stubble from the farmers. Only then the plan will be successful. The next is Goa Maritime Conclave to discuss security challenges. Now we know that the Indian Ocean region is important to India, and the Prime Minister came about with the policy of Sagar, that is security and growth for all in the region. So the Goa Maritime Conclave is an Indian Navy's conclave that focuses on the security challenges of India in the Indian Ocean region. Now Chief of the Navies or head of the maritime forces from 12 Indian littorals states, Indian Ocean littorals like Bangladesh, Comoros, Indonesia, Madagascar, Malaysia, Maldives, Mauritius, Myanmar, Seychelles, Singapore, Sri Lanka, Thailand will participate in the event in the conclave. Now, the Goa Maritime Conclave is Indian Navy's outreach to these countries in providing a platform to harness the wisdom of these countries of maritime security and academia. This can be somewhat related to the various exercises that are taken up by the Army and the Navy and also the Air Force. With Indian Ocean region becoming the focus of the 21st century strategic landscape, the GMC aims to bring together the stakeholders and deliberate on collaborative implementation strategies in dealing with contemporary maritime security challenges. Security concerns. What are the security concerns of India in the Indian Ocean region? Let us just see few points very briefly. Maritime terrorism, especially because India learned a very big lesson from 2611 when the terrorists used the sea route to enter the country. Smuggling, especially of drugs and various other goods. Then the ocean resources, which are critical for a nation but are prone to exploitation. Freedom of navigation, we have seen recently how the United States came up to Lakshadweep and entered the exclusive economic zone of India without asking a permission from India and therefore violating the sovereignty and integrity of our country. Disaster mitigation is another big important issue between the nations and also poses a security challenge to development and economic growth. Main trade routes. Now, Indian Ocean is a very important trade route for all the countries in the world because it not only gives access to the Asian countries, Africa, but also eases the distance to the European countries from the Mediterranean Sea and the Suez Canal. So you can see here India is at the head of the main trading routes. Its ports are of critical security significance to India, the various islands, etc., and all the main trading routes running from the West Asia to the Arabian Peninsula, the Horn of Africa, the whole of Eastern Africa, Madagascar, East Asia, South Asia, and the islands in the Pacific Ocean. So it's a very prominent trading route for many of the countries and also India. Therefore, tackling the security challenges in this region is of immense importance, also keeping in mind the string of pearls policy of China. The next most important is Ethiopia rebelled joined forces against the government. Now, this is something about an African country where there is a problem, and the rebels have joined hands against the Ethiopian government, and they are called as the Oromo Liberation Army and the Tigray People's Liberation Front, which have been locked in a year-long war against the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's government. Now, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed had received a Nobel Peace Prize in 2019 because he ended a long-standing dispute with the neighboring Eritrea. Now, it was after this that the problem started, and the country has been in a state of emergency after the rebel forces attacked military bases. This happened as the rebel forces feared that the government of Ethiopia, which is essentially a federal one, will now be turned into a centralized system. Mr. Abiy's liberalized politics, which he set up a new political party and also removed key Tigranian government leaders, which he accused of corruption and repression, therefore seen a backlash by these rebel groups. These moves of Abiy by claiming the Nobel Peace Prize won him popular acclaim, but this also caused unease among the critics in Tigray. Tigray is a region in northern Ethiopia. Tigray's leaders therefore saw Abiy's reforms as an attempt to centralize power and to destroy Ethiopia's federal system. Now, the fume came to head when Tigray defied the central government last year and held its own regional election, while the central government had actually postponed the national elections because of coronavirus. And the rift grew stronger when the central government suspended the funding for Tigray after it conducted the elections and cut ties with it in October. At that time, Tigray's administration said that this amounted to a declaration of war, and this is what it is doing now by joining hands with other rebel groups. Tensions increased, and eventually, a catalyst was when Tigrayan forces were accused of attacking the army bases to steal weapons. So if you look at the map here, I suppose it's not very clear, but then you can look into your atlas once. Ethiopia shares borders with Eritrea, Djibouti, Somalia, Kenya, not Uganda, and Sudan. We can see the Blue Nile River and the Lake Tana, and also you have in south Lake Turkana. So Tigray is located just near Lake Tana, and from there the problem has started, which is now being declared in a state of emergency in Ethiopia. So Goel urges fivefold boost to exports of technical textiles, and this is another important news. Now, the government had come up recently with the National Technical Textiles Mission. The government now wants to increase to 5 times the exports of technical textiles in 3 years, the Commerce Minister told the representatives of the Indian Technical Textile Association, a body which represents this sector. Now, the world market for technical textile is $250 billion, and India's share is only 19 billion, very less, even less than 10%. Therefore, there is a lot of potential for India to be a part of this technical textile in the world trade. The biggest players are US, Western European countries, China and Japan, and technical textiles have their use in various sectors of the economy, almost every sector. Now, in January 2019, the government had issued codes for technical textiles numbering 207, and India became a net exporter of technical textile. It also unveiled the National Technical Textiles Mission in February last year. In financial year 2021, India's major share of technical textile exports consisted of PPEs, N95 and surgical masks, fabric for PPEs and masks, and as many as 92 technical textile items have been made mandatory for use by the government in organizations covering agriculture, horticulture, highways, railways, water resources, and medical applications. So, a brief idea about what the National Technical Textiles Mission says is, now the mission is to be implemented during the financial year 2021 to 23-24 with an outlay of 1480 crore. The mission is to have four components: R&D, market development, export promotion, education and skill development. Focus on usage of technical textile in various flagship schemes of the government. We bring will bring on overall improvement in the cost of economy and promote make in India. Now the government has been looking at improving the exports of technical textiles, and there is more potential even in the local economy. So moving on to another important, we come here to the editorial part of today of November 6th, that is charting a trade route, which speaks about the most important topics which are actually points of difference between the developed and the developing countries, and which can be discussed at the WTO Ministerial Conference 12 negotiations, which will be held in 2021 in Geneva. So the writer brings to the fore the main points of bias or difference in the World Trade Organization negotiations at a time when the global countries are looking at improving the trade in the aftermath of the pandemic. So he brings to fore the important issues which are points of bias or differences, especially between developing and developed countries, India being a part of them. And he says that these issues should be looked at so that the global trade in the aftermath of the pandemic is beneficial to everyone, especially on these important issues of difference. Let us look at few of these issues now, which the writer has discussed. So he says that he says that the WTO negotiations on some of these issues and how that they should be a equitable solution so that all the members benefit from them. Now the Ministerial Conference 12 is being held at an important juncture when the global trade scenario is upbeat now after the pandemic. And the recent outlook of WTO says that the global trade volumes would expand by almost 11% in 2021 and by nearly 5% in 2022 in the aftermath of the pandemic. Therefore, these are favorable tidings and an ideal setting for the trade ministers at WTO to revisit the trade rules and agree on a program that can help them to maintain the trade growth. So as we know that the WTO as an organization that lays the rules for free and rule-based trading between the nations. The organization also prohibits discrimination between the trading partners by reducing or eliminating tariffs, quotas, and other restrictions. So there are some areas which the countries find unfair or inequitable, and the meeting can help to deal with such issues, says the writer. Some of them are the IPR on the vaccines, investment facilitation, electronic commerce, fisheries subsidies. Let me tell you, I have not included the points over here. You can access them on our Telegram channel, where I will be placing the editorial along with mains related questions in the channel, which you can attempt to write and which will help you in having important points in your answer. So as you practice writing every day, that will lead up to your good answers in the examination, and it will also help you with content. So some of the issues that have been focus of discussions and I've seen divides. Let us discuss few of them. Now we all know that IPR on medicines and vaccines have been asked to be waived out by India and South Africa, which tabled a proposal in the WTO in October 2020 for waiving off several forms of IPR on health products, especially medicines for COVID-19, so that there is timely access to affordable medical products by the least developed and the low developing countries. But however, the unfortunate reality is that recently when the WTO Director General Okonjo Iweala was here, and when the discussion came up, she was completely silent on the issue. And also there is a divide between India, South Africa, the developing countries and much of the developed countries who support their pharmaceutical industries, saying that they will lose on their money if they do away with the IPRs. So this is one difference. The other is fisheries and e-commerce. Now the discussion on subsidies on fisheries I've discussed with you last in some of my slides just few days back. So this subsidies on fisheries is making rounds for some time, and also India has been part of it. India has also been in agreement with the fisheries on an agreement for fisheries subsidies, but India says that the current draft on fisheries subsidies, which asks certain countries to do away with them so that it does not affect the developing countries and does not lead to over exploitation of the fishing stocks. Now these fishery subsidies are given by some countries to the fishermen in the form of like less cost of trawlers or other equipment which are needed for fishing. And moreover, many fishermen or the fishing sector of these developed countries are exploiting now the waters which are not under the legal control and exploiting areas which are under the control of other countries. So this is leading to loss of livelihood for the fishermen in those countries whose areas are being over exploited. Now the discussion, therefore, India says that the current draft on an agreement of fisheries is not balanced. It is unbalanced because they do not provide any solution for the large scale commercial fishing which these some of the developed countries are doing, and which are leading to depleting of fishing stocks in the world by some developed countries, and are not even dealing with the issues of the subsidies that are being provided by some developed countries. So unless these issues are adhered or addressed in the fisheries agreement, there cannot be a balanced solution. Another important point of difference between the developed and developing is discussion on e-commerce. Now the e-commerce rules, that is global rules for e-commerce trades, has been doing rounds since 1998, and a key focus of the 1998 e-commerce work program is development needs of developing countries should be taken account. This was held in the 1998 discussion. However, if you see the present document now in 2021, developing countries say that this is entirely missing and it is biased towards the interests of developed countries who have a much developed e-com market system. The rules will also place a permanent moratorium in the present form on the duties by developing countries, for example, like India, who will then lose on their revenue which they earn through such import duties. Also, the rules will be detrimental to the e-commerce market in countries such as India, which are at a growing stage. It will also lead to data loss, and the rules which are for developing a e-commerce regime are still unbalanced and do not take the interest of developing countries. So this is another point of difference. The next one is investment facilitation agreement. Now the current focus of WTO is to promote the adoption of investment facilitation agreement. 2001 Doha Ministerial Declaration had included a program on investment, but it was too soon taken off the table as developing countries were opposed to the continuation because the discussions were expanding to protect the rights of foreign investors rather than the developing countries in which these foreign investors invest. Now, many countries, including India, have cited legal precedents such as the Marrakesh Agreement of 1994 that do not allow investment facilitation itself to be discussed at the WTO. They say investment falls outside the trade body's mandate, and it is emphasized that multilateral agreements on investment will undermine the policy space and the right to regulate investment in the own country in strategic sectors. India also says that investment is a bilateral issue and there should be no global rules on this, and it should be left to the country itself to decide on things such as FDI or the arbitration clauses which come under the investment. So finally, the writers say that besides present global rules being biased and which favor the global oligopolies, the current negotiation process in WTO is flawed. The negotiations on e-commerce investment facilitation are being conducted not by the mandate by giving entire not by a mandate given by the entire membership of WTO. What he means is says that the decisions and the negotiations are based on the interest of a very few countries who have come up with these suggestions in the form of joint statement initiatives, where only a section of membership or very few developed countries to protect their own interests have produced these agreements. These then are being offered to the other countries in a take it or leave it basis, therefore putting a whole bias in the negotiation. The entire process is detrimental to the very existence of the rule based multilateral trading system under the WTO, says the writer. And finally, he says that India and South Africa have forcefully argued against these joint statement initiatives. So, this is a time where the WTO Ministerial Conference should take into consideration the opinions of each and every member of the WTO if they want the global trade to flourish equitably. The next one is the right time for India to have its climate law. Now, this comes at a time when India is attending the COP26 and Prime Minister has announced the Panchamrit. Now, the writer says that India should have a climate law because India does not have a total, a comprehensive law to deal with climate change. And so the writer puts up certain arguments in favor of what it calls a climate law. It says the reason which the writer says that we need a climate law is because the first is that our existing laws are not adequate to deal with climate change on the whole. We have Environmental Protection Law 1986, Air Prevention and Control Act 1981, Water Prevention and Control Act 1974, but yet the climate is not water and air completely. Also, it says that the Environmental Protection Act is inadequate to deal with violations on climate because the clause 24 of the act itself says that if an offence is committed under EPA or any other law, then the person will be punished under the other law, for example CRPC. Therefore, the EPA is subordinate to other law. The second is that there is a need for integratingly for monitoring adaptation and mitigation comprehensively. Therefore, we need a climate law to deal with climate change on the whole. The third point that the writer says is that we need a climate commission to have the power and authority to issue directions and oversee the plans and programs for implementing of climate change. For example, doing away with single use plastic or increasing the use of renewable energy, etc. Tracing carbon footprints. The writer says that we need a climate law because we have a Bureau of Energy Efficiency which only looks at the efficiency of electronics. But then we also need to look at the carbon efficiency, and for that region, and also reduce our carbon footprint from every single activity of the economy. So, therefore, we need a climate law and a climate commission who will take into consideration the carbon footprint of each and every sector. Fifth is we need a system of accountability and liability. By giving an example of the floods that occurred in Uttarakhand because of the carelessness of a dam that opened the floodgates and which created muck and destroyed the property and fields, the writer says that the Climate Commission will prevent such negligible happenings in such fragile areas. But according to my point of view, another commission to look into climate change, especially when climate change deals with each and every sector, and each and every ministry or each and every sector has their particular ministries which look into the permissions or the compliance norms, etc. Rather than that, we can always have better compliance of the EIA or granting approval to projects, then reducing the deforestation, increasing the renewable energy, proper implementation of laws, the bureaucrats and the various institutions that have been set up to protect the environment do their duties and jobs perfectly. And apart from that, there should be the public responsibility of also of doing their part, and along with that the government now must have budgeting of the climate budgeting, especially in the annual budget, to look at what we are losing to climate change and what we are gaining in the form of conservation, mitigation, adaptation, improving the use of 3 R's, that is reduce, recycle and reuse. So these steps will help rather than again coming up with a whole climatic commission. Maybe the climate commission can guide the government on various policies that it can be taken on integrating environment with development. But apart from that, yes, the few of the, as the views are personal, few of these suggestions can be looked at. So but we don't we should see how far now India needs a climate law to deal with climate change on the whole. And the next most important topic is about the cost of prohibition. The writer brings to the fore about the deaths in Bihar, especially with regard to illicit liquor consumption, and how the policy of prohibition has been a failure because of the rise in black marketing of liquor and also illicit liquor consumption. So it brings to the context is the rise, and speaks about how the negative externalities of prohibition have come to the fore, with data showing that there have been almost 3.4 lakh people arrested in last 5 years, which is not a small number, and 150 lakh liters of country made on an Indian made foreign liquor seized, meaning that though there is a prohibition, there is still rise in people having consuming illicit liquor and recoursing to black markets purchase of liquor. So the government has to clamp down on illicit production, black marketing of illicit liquor, and because prohibition is not a golden bullet to just deal with it, there has to be proper implementation of it if it has to deal with liquor consumption in the state. So this is, you can access the Telegram channel for the whole points regarding the points which can be used in the answer. The last one is keeping faith. So the context is WHO emergency use listing of Covaxin. Now the writer speaks about the approval of Covaxin, how its timing is apt as many countries have still not vaccinated even 10% of the population, while the goal of WHO is to vaccinate 40% of people in all countries by the year end. However, highlighting the problems with supply and also with price of vaccine, finally brings to the fore the long time taken for approval of Covaxin by AstraZeneca, even in spite of all the procedures and data complied, and therefore calls out to the government to look into the issue, as many more Indian vaccine makers may apply for EUL. So this is about Covaxin gaining the EUL from WHO. Now Covaxin is a indigenously manufactured vaccine of India by Bharat Biotech. It is an inactivated whole virion vaccine which has been developed. After the UL, the most important benefit is that there will be better availability of the vaccine in many more countries, but then Bharat Biotech has to improve its supply, particularly not only locally and also to cater the needs for other countries. Now, the WHO's aim is to have at least 40% of the people in all countries to be vaccinated by the year end, but this goal seems to be very it's very far achieved, because still in many countries there are less than 2% of the population also have been vaccinated, not vaccinated. Now, the British Medical Journal has brought out some data. It says that there are many countries who still have to vaccinate large percentage of the population. According to the recent estimates, it says around 1% of the people in low income countries have received their jabs. Only 1%. 70 countries are yet to vaccinate 10% of the population, and 30 countries, including much of Africa, have vaccinated fewer than 2%. In Latin America, only 1 in 4 of the population have received a vaccine dose. So the EUL by WHO is sure that it will lead to more demand for vaccine from other countries. As I said, but there are glitches with the supply because Covaxin has not been able to provide timely supply in the local market, that is India itself. Also, the price of Covaxin is very high compared to Covishield. Covaxin and Covishield are the two most important vaccines that are being used to inoculate the people in India, though there are availability of other vaccines also. Now, the Covaxin EUL is timely because many Indians who are who want to travel abroad were facing a problem because there were many countries were not recognizing Covaxin as a vaccination for the for COVID-19, and therefore now this will ease travel for foreign for Indians abroad, especially students and business people. With Covaxin also being closely approved for children, there will be rise in demand now for this population segment, and therefore the company must ramp up its supply. Apart from that, there are many other companies in India who are developing vaccines. They must also try to get the EUL from WHO so that there can be a larger group of vaccine manufacturers who will make their vaccines available for the population not only in India but other parts of the countries in the world who do not have the local manufacture of vaccines and are dependent on other countries such as India. Many of neighboring Indian countries itself depend on India for the vaccines, and India has been supplying some vaccines under the um, Sagar initiative, Maitri Sagar. There is some program called as Sagar. I'm sorry, I'm not able to remember the name, but yes, under Vaccine Maitri initiative. Yes, Vaccine Maitri initiative. India has been supplying vaccines to the neighbors. So, this brings me to the end of the topics for today. I will see you tomorrow with a new list of topics. Until then, bye bye.